Hello everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. And I guess we can start the webinar. Anyone can confirm is my voice is audible? Hello, and anyone can confirm? Okay, yeah, it's audible. Okay, let's get started. Hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar on Begin Cloud Red Team Journey with Cyber Warfare Labs Cyber Security Playground. And I'm Nandini Bharadwaj, the operating officer at Cyber Warfare Labs, and I'm really excited to have you all here with us today. So let's get started. Before we jump on the main topic, let me give you a brief about our company. So, Cyber Warfare Labs, as everyone knows, is a UK based edtech cybersecurity company. The company is committed to addressing cybersecurity challenges with real-time hands-on solution. Our virtual platforms allow users to refine their skills through plug-and-play practical labs and a diverse range of certification courses. So the company has two main divisions. The first is Cyber Range Labs. So this division focuses on providing practical real-time solution to cybersecurity challenges. So they offer a virtual platform where user can engage in hands-on trainings through practical labs that are ready to use. And the second one is upskilling platform. So Cyber Warfare Labs offer a wide range of on-demand courses designed for individual at all skills level. Our trainings and courses are available to educational institute, government agencies, and corporate organizations. Both offline and online trainings options are available. So if you want more information, you can drop a mail to our support team, that is support@cyberwarfare.live. So let's move on to next slide. Okay, so let me introduce to our speaker of today's webinar, that is Manish Gupta. He's the CEO of Cyber Warfare Labs and co-founder as well, with over 7.5 years of expertise in offensive information security, specializing in red team activities and renowned for his research in real-world cyber attack simulation and advanced persistent threat APT. Manish has presented at esteemed conferences like Black Hat USA, DEF CON, and many more. So today, get ready to learn from his wealth of experience and insights. So that's all for the speaker. And as promised, dear participants, we are excited to share that you will receive your attendance certificate along with the video recording in next 48 hours. And but wait, there's more. Five lucky winners will have the opportunity to win access of our most popular course, that is Certified Hybrid Multi-Cloud Red Team course, CHMRTS course. The winner will be announced shortly after the webinar, so stay tuned. And yeah, so thank you for being part of this engaging session. We will look forward for your continuous participation. So without further ado, I would like Manish sir to take over and let's get started. So it's over to you, sir. And thank you everyone. And I hope you will enjoy today's webinar. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Nandini. I'm audible.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Just give me 1 minute. Okay. Yeah, hi. Sorry, guys. I think there was some issues from my end. I'm audible?
Yeah,
Okay,
you are
perfect.
audible. You
Perfect,
can start.
perfect, perfect. Yeah, apologies for the delay. So there was some issue from our system. Okay, so I'm just going to start. So as Nandini mentions, so today's webinar, so mainly focus on how organizations require a red team operation on multi-cloud environment. Because now these days what happen, most of the organizations are moving on premises to cloud environment. And when you say cloud, there are multiple vendors are there. The major vendor is AWS, Azure, and GCPs. So how it's different than the traditional method that organizations follow to perform red team operation or pen testing on the on premises. Now things are changed, and organizations move their resources, their infrastructure to the multi-cloud environment. So from red team point of view, or from penetration testing point of view, how it will be different than the traditional method. So the agenda of this webinar is to discuss about the current cloud red team market or cloud pen testing market, how it's different. Then we develop some cyber kill chain, what the kill chain that we follow to perform red team operations or pen testing on multi-cloud environment. Then we will show you some of the live demo, how it's different than the cloud environment than the traditional on-premises. We'll discuss about our newly launched certifications that we are going to launch. What are the things you will get it in that certificate? And if you at the end, if you have any query questions around the pen testing or red teaming on cloud environment, you can definitely feel free to ask. That will be the end. So let's start the session for today's. So when you're talking about cloud, definitely there are a lot of risk, a lot of security misconfiguration happen in multi-cloud environment. There are a lot of regions that has happened because of it. Administrators are unaware of about a lot of different misconfiguration. There are a lot of hundreds of services are there. Some services directly exposed to the publicly accessible, and there are a lot of misconfigurations are there. So this is how the cloud markets are there, and that's why it's really important to perform pen testing, some security review, and red teaming operations on these cloud environment. So now, when you're talking about red teaming on multi-cloud environments, so this is the kill chain that we develop. You can say it's some kind of similar to the traditional one, but there are a few modifications we added there that is only applicable on cloud environment. So suppose when you look at here, you can say the first and important point that is coming to picture is of course recurrent. So how you perform the OSINT. So there are hundreds of services which is directly exposed to the public. So that can be a GitHub, that can be a Sodan or any other sources where you can retrieve a lot of information which will directly give you access to the cloud environment. It's like leaked key on GitHub, or where you don't require actually. So suppose the key, which is a programmatic key, where you can directly access the cloud environment without worrying about multi-factor authentications, expiration of key, or any other different conditions things. Second point here is these keys is, like some of the keys are valid for a lifetime access. So if you have access of those key that we retrieve from different sources, that will allow you to access the cloud for a lifetime. Third one is these key uh, doesn't require MFA, so there is no need of MFA, and these key have excessive permissions than a traditional or than a normal user account. So that's why there are a lot of different ways you can identify from the internet side, right? So once you identify those informations, it's not like you identify only the credentials. You can identify the public IP address of any of the application running in there, and then you can exploit that application and get access to the cloud. Some of the case studies we will also discuss here that will target three of the cloud vendors: AWS, Azure, and GCP. Now, once you done the recon, then you'll get initial access of that cloud environment, and then the third step that's coming to picture is called creating your persistence access. So when you talking about persistence in the cloud environment, there are two things. One thing is you are creating a backdoor in one of the compute instance that you compromise it. That we traditionally use it. Suppose if you're creating a backdoor in a Windows or Linux system, that's the one way. Second one way, you can directly create a persistence on the cloud environments, like creating a secondary access key for a user or creating additional service principals there. So that is a different than the traditional that we have. So there are multiple ways to create a persistence access or backdoor in the cloud environment. So once you have that backdoor there, then you no need to worry about if you lose your access. You can even use that backdoor to gain the another access or further access. Then we can escalate our privilege, right? Definitely. So initially, maybe you don't have that sufficient privilege to do some operations. Then you have to identify different misconfiguration or excessive permissions that will allow you to escalate your privilege there. So once you get it into that cloud environment, you can do further the internal enumerations to identify how this company architectures look like, what resources they have, in which region, what kind of resources they have. Then definitely your motive is to get more credentials in within the cloud environment, and then you can perform the later moment. So this is the step you have to follow it. All these steps you have to do it in cloud environment only until or unless your main motive is achieved. Depend upon what kind of operations you are doing it, there will be your objective behind that red team operations. Sometimes there can be your exfiltrate some critical information, sometimes it can be perform ransomware simulations, crypto mining. So depend upon your objective, you can perform those operations and then you can complete your red team operation. So this is the kill chain that we follow if we are doing a red team operation against a multi-cloud environment or cloud environments. Now, the lab that we design here is, so you can see we design one, operating system. The name is Red Cloud OS, that is available on GitHub. So you can download that OS. That will allow you to do, without, downloading multiple tools. So we configure in a such a way that you can start your pen testing or red team journey just downloading that VM, configure your credential, and then let's start this one. So this is a cloud adversary simulation platform or operating system that we design it, where we install multiple tools, where we install multiple tools basis on different techniques that you can just configure your credentials and you can start working on your red team or pen testing things. So that Red Cloud OS is available on GitHub as well. We are also going to present this Red Cloud OS in upcoming Black Hat Asia Arsenal. So if you are there in the Singapore, you can join us to do this thing. But here we can use any other operating system if you want, but you need to configure a lot of things here. So now what we are going to do it here, we are just going to demonstrate some of the objective or some of the our motive that if we are dealing with multi-cloud environment, how it's look like and how it's easy for an attacker to get inside the cloud environment and do much more things there. So we created just a small exercise that will target for AWS, Azure, and GCP, that will give you idea about how it's easy to get access to the cloud environment, and then you can do much more things there. So this will allow, so the main objective behind this demo lab is to give us the familiarity with the different CLI that is based on cloud side, and how you can exfiltrate the metadata, how you can configure the metadata, what kind of data contain what kind of informations, and how you can do, you can enumerate the multiple things within the cloud environment that can target not only just single, but it's going to target three of the cloud providers, AWS, Azure, and GCP. So let's get started. So let's suppose recently one of the client share, they asked to do a red team operation or pen testing for their one of the cloud environment, and they share three different IP address. These IP address can be belongs to AWS, Azure, or GCP, and there is an application running on these IP address. Now, our motive is to identify the vulnerability which is there in that applications, and then identify which cloud provider this particular application is hosted, which what kind of services they are using it, and how we can retrieve that metadata, the token information from these applications. So let's get started. The first IP that I'm going to use it here is this one. Okay, so let's suppose This is the IP address that is provided by one of our client want us to do some test, some kind of pen testing and red teaming assessment. So this is depend upon what kind of scope of engagement we have. We are using that client only share this IP address. Sometimes what happen if you're doing red team assessment for one of the for any of your client, they will share some credentials that can be used for assume beach scenario. They will share only the list of IP address, or they will say, no, you have to identify by yourself. So you have to do the recon and OSINT and all activities, and then you have to gain access. So depend upon what kind of exercise they are, expecting from you side. So in our case, they share one IP address. So you can say this is IP address. Seems like there is one application running on this particular IP address. So that will give the information like if you specify any of the domain, let's say. So this is the application which is running there, and this will give some sort of result there. Now there is one more options to update your information. So basically similar like this application will accept some of the data from you, and the backend they will check the reputation of the website that you hold or that you specified. Now, our motive is to identify the vulnerability within that application. So we are not going to discuss much about how web application security and web application vulnerabilities work, but I'm just thinking, so we discussed or we discovered that these applications have vulnerabilities. So let's type any URL here. Let's say, then you can choose any of these. And we identify that this is the applications. Uh, Suppose if I specify URL here, so there are two kind of vulnerabilities is associated with this application. One is SSRF, server side request forgery, and another one is remote code execution. So there are two vulnerabilities we identify it. So if you are familiar with web application security, you can identify these. This one. Now, if you run it, hit it, you can see that if I specify this one, in the backend, this will so there will be one parameter which will load this particular URL. So that means there is a vulnerability of SSRF, server-side request forgery. I'm not going to discuss in detail about what is SSRF, but we'll see in the cloud point of view if any of your application which is hosted on cloud environment, any of the services can be your virtual machines, can be your Lambda functions in AWS, or can be your serverless functions, your container image. If there is a SSRF vulnerabilities, you can use one URL called this is non-routable URL 169.254.169.254. So this is the URL which is applicable for every cloud providers, AWS, Azure, GCP, and other cloud providers as well. This is a non-routable, IP address where this is basically used to serve the metadata there. Now, if you hit this URL, you can see you'll get a result like this. You can see the result. Now, how you identify like where this particular application is hosted. So if you see like this is a directory structure like this, like some of the 2017 dates and this structure and latest one. That means your application is hosted on AWS cloud. Right. So this is a non-routable URL which will internally connect to your metadata endpoint and will give the result to you. Because in our case, this application is vulnerable to SSRF. We can retrieve those information. So if you want to access it now, let's try to use to get the metadata information from this URL. So you can see I'm using this latest directory, and then you can get the information about metadata, user data if they store any kind of data there. Sometime what happens they store the credentials and some other sensitive information in user data field. So that is also you have to take a look at there. Now, so there are multiple you can see if you looking here you can see there are multiple subdirectories there like EMI ID, launch, public IP address, profile, all a different directory. In our case, what we are going to do, we are going to have this directory named IAM. because this is the directory where actually this will contain the security credentials that is attached to that particular VM. So definitely there will be one VM or any other services on AWS cloud where will be some sort of security credentials attached there, or instance profile if it's a Windows, or if it's a what you can say, if it's an EC2 instance, there will be instance profile attached to this one, or there will be one role which is attached to this one. If it's a Lambda function, there will be a role definitely attached to that Lambda function. So let's try to access it. Now you can see clearly there is one role. The role name is jump EC2 role, which is attached to this VM where your virtual machine is where your application is hosted. So let's copy this one and let's use it, and then you can see what information you will get it here. So if it's look at here in bottom, you can see this will give the information about access key ID, secret, and token. So this is basically a temporary credentials that belongs to this particular role which is attached to VM where your application is running. So suppose this is the applications, this website tracking application which is hosted on virtual machines, and there is one role which is attached to that virtual machines, and this is the credentials that you retrieve it here. Now, we don't have any access of any cloud providers. We only have the IP address. With exploiting this IP address, we can retrieve these temporary credentials. Now, how you can configure those credentials to get access to do multiple things on cloud providers itself. So let's open a command prompt or a terminal. We can use command called AWS configure. I'll just take a help of here. So basically what we are going to do, we are going to set, just a second, I'll just copy it. What we are going to do it here, we are configuring the AWS CLI with the credentials that we retrieved from here. So let's say this is an access key ID. Let's copy the access key ID from here, set it here. In this case, I'm just setting in a profile called Red Team. So AWS CLI is the tool which will allow you to interact with the cloud providers. So in this case, we don't initially we don't have any credential, but now we get the credential. And when you see access key ID, if it is start with ASIA, that means this is a temporary credential which will be expire after some time. So now if you hit enter, we set the access key ID. Now what we are going to do, we are setting the access key secret. So there are three things. If it's a temporary credentials, there are three things: access key ID, access key secret, and third one is your access session token or access token. So where is access key ID? Where is the secret? So this is the secret. So let's copy it and let's paste it here. Okay. Now third one is we are going to configure our session token. So here we configure session token. Session token I can get it from here. So what I'm going to do it here, I'm just checking the source code because it's difficult to copy it. And if you look at here, you can see same. You can clearly see you get a access key ID, secret, and access token in your response because it's the length is very long. So I'm just copying this one from here. Copy this data from here, configure here, and set it. So what I did, so basically, as a pen testing or red teamers, what we did it here, we identify this is a applications which is running there. We identify there is SSRF vulnerability. What we are going to do it here, we are going to retrieve the credentials which is belongs to this particular role, and this is the role which is attached to that VM where our application is running. So now, if you want to test if credential is valid or not, you can use this command AWS SPS get Polar identity. File name, red team. you can see here clearly that this is the role name which is belongs to this credential. So this credential is belongs to the role name jump EC2 role, the same role which is we retrieve the credential from here. Now you configure with AWS STS, you can do any actions there based on what permission they have. That is comes under testing what kind of permission they have, internal enumeration, what kind of resources they have, and then you can do much more things there. So in this demo we'll just only cover these things, but red team will start from here and then it'll go enumerations, privilege escalations, lateral movement, identify different VPCs there and then exfiltrate the data and then perform some ransomware or some crypto mining activities there, and then you can achieve your goal. So this is how we identify the where actually misconfigurations there in the application side. If it's a misconfigured, if it's a SSRF or RC, we can retrieve it. One more important point here is, so generally when you do this kind of operation, sometime you find out here is instant metadata version 1 is enabled. That's why you are without applying any header, you are able to retrieve these credentials. If there is a metadata version 2 is enabled, you cannot use SSRF to directly retrieve it. You have to add the header. In this case, we am unable to add the header, so you have to identify some RC vulnerability or some ways where you can add the header and retrieve the token. So if your VM, if there is a metadata version 1 is enabled, you can directly access these credentials. If metadata version 2 is enabled, you have to use the header and then you can retrieve it. If metadata version 2 is there, you can't retrieve it without having having the header there. So that's the important point. By default, yeah, important point here is by default, EC2 instance, when you create it, there will be only metadata version 1 by default. But if you are allowed metadata 2, some organization they will allow, some organization they forget it to apply it. In that case, it's like depend upon how they configure it while creating the instance. Okay, so this is the AWS side. We configure it and you can do much more things there. So this is the one IP that we identify. Let's go for another IP. So let's say this is another IP that is shared by one of the vendors or the same client. Now we can see it here. Let's take some time. Just a second. I think this is 73 or 83. I'll have to just check. Anyways, we'll try to another IP if it's not accessible. Yeah, it will take some time. So you can see it here, same application is hosted on different virtual machines or different services, but we are not sure which cloud providers this services is belongs to, where they hosted it, which cloud provider and what kind of services they are using it. So again, same, we identify that we have the SSRF. You can use the same techniques, so you can specify any kind of things here. I just want to show you the difference. What is the difference if it's hosted on different cloud providers and how you can retrieve it? Very simple thing. The first thing is if you identify SSRF or RC, you just need to specify this URL. Any cloud providers if it's hosted. 169.254, 169.254. And yeah, you can see like this, there is different directory structures. In AWS, we'll follow directory structure in format of years, month, and date. Here you can follow the directory structure in compute metadata, something like this. This, if you find this kind of directory structure, that means it's hosted on Google Cloud. So your services, your application is hosted on Google Cloud if you identify these kind of things there. Now let's look at the directory structure. Let's go again. What happened? So generally what happen in this case, it won't give you a result here. Right, you can see it not giving any kind of result here. Why? Because of by default AWS, if it's a version 1 is enabled, you no need to specify any sort of header there. But in case of Azure and GCP, you have to specify the header, otherwise it won't work. So you have to specify the header, then only it will work. So, and if there is a SSRF vulnerabilities, you can't add the header. So you have to identify the RC there. So what I can do, I'll just keep it anything, and this is the field where we have a remote code execution. And now let's try. Here I can using curl command. So if it's a RC, you can execute any command. So I'm using this curl command and then accessing it. What you can see it here, it will give you the error here that you need to specify this header. If you don't specify this header, it will won't give you any kind of result here. That's why we required, or you can see it's the error is coming from Google end. That means this is hosted on Google Cloud. So let's add this header, metadata flavor Google header, and let's do it. So what I'm going to do it, I'm just adding the header, and then I just hit enter. And you can see once you add this header metadata flavor Google, you can access the other directory structure, subdirectory. This is the important point, right? Because by default, Azure and Google Cloud, you need to specify the header, otherwise it will give you the error. But uh, uh, in case of AWS, if it's version 1 is enabled, no need to specify. If version 2 is enabled, you have to specify it. So that's the important point when you're dealing with these kind of things. Yeah. Now let's go and just check the instance. This is the directory. I'm going to check it. Similar like any other cloud provider, you have multiple subdirectories. Here, the important point that is comes here in AWS, we have a IAM. Inside the IAM, we have a security credentials. Here, we have a one subdirectory that is called service account. One second. This is called service account. This is the subdirectory. And you can see this is the service account which is attached to this VM. Like AWS, there is a role which is attached to a VM. In GCP, there is a service account which is attached to a VM. One more difference here is like in AWS and GCP, AWS, if you run any instance, by default there won't be any role. So you have to explicitly attach any of this role to this particular VM. But in GCP, by default, there will be default service account. So if you just started a VM, like you haven't attached any kind of service account, by default, there will be default service account. But you can change it, you can remove it, that's up to you. But by default, there will be there. That means it's more riskier because if it's a by default, sometimes they forget to remove it. Sometimes they forget to, change the default service account which is attached here. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just specify here this particular service account directory, and then you can get the information. So you can get the information about the email address of the service account, scope, because in Azure and GCP they follow auth mechanism, so definitely there will be scope, and you can see there will be token. So what I can do it here, I just copy token and just hit enter. So you can see you will get an access token like this. So you can get the information about access token. It's a similar like temporary credentials, auth bearer token, which is access token that you can use it to gain access to the cloud or Google Cloud environment. Now what we can do first, verify if its token is valid or not. So what I'm going to do it here. This is the endpoint. This will allow you to verify if token is valid or not. So let's copy this endpoint, change the token that you retrieve it from here. What I can do, I'll just use the inspector here, and this is the token you have. Copy the token from here to One second. Yeah, this is access token, and this first check if it's a valid or not. You can get the information. This token is valid. So if it's expire, you won't get anything. Now, what you can do with this token in GCP side, if you retrieve these tokens, how you can use your Google Cloud CLI to use with this token. So what you can do, you can just suppose I'm just using nano command to store the token in one of the file. So it's already there. So what I can do, token one, paste it the token here. What I did, I just copy this token in a text file, and you can use your vCloud CLI with the token that you retrieve. Token is a temporary credentials which will be expire after some time. So based on different cloud providers, there will be expiration date will be there. Now what you can do, how you can validate. So we already validate this token is live. What kind of access this token have? So you can just check list, and then you have to specify access token file. Name of the token is token one. You can see this token have access on this project, and then you can do much more things there based on what kind of access this particular access token have, or this particular service account have, which is attached to this particular VM. So this is how, if you are dealing with these kind of things in Google Cloud side, you can retrieve the temporary token if there is a vulnerability there, and then you can use it there. So this is how we can do these actions on Google Cloud side. We did it on AWS, we did it on Google. We saw the difference here. Like in AWS, it's a different. In Azure, in Google Cloud, it's different. Let's take example of third IP address. So the operation won't stop here. There are hundreds of things there. Once you get the access of internal access of these cloud providers, you can just check, you can enumerate, you can identify what kind of privileges you have, how you can perform your or how you can escalate your privilege, how you can laterally move, and how you can exfiltrate and do much more things there. So I'm just talking about the third IP address. The same application is hosted on three different cloud providers, but how it's different when you performing RC, when you have RC or remote code execution, or if you retrieve these tokens. So this is the one way to retrieve this token. There are multiple ways you can get these kind of token there. How you can dealing with this token, how you can configure those tokens there. So now let's do the same thing. And you can also get an idea about where SSRF works and where SSRF doesn't work, how you can retrieve this thing. So suppose if I'm using the same SSRF exploitations, and you can see 169 to 54, 169 to 54, there won't be any result here. If it's a, apart from AWS version 1, there won't be any result there. Like you won't retrieve it. So now in this case, what you have to do it? You have to use the same. Here, if you can see the detail, if you can see the detail here, you can get the information like there are some missing query parameters there in Azure. I'll just show you, just a second. I'll just show. So if it's Azure, you have to, so different, so we created a one centralized things. So what kind of services you have, how you can retrieve those kind of tokens there with the different services, different cloud provider. So suppose if it's Azure, you have to use in this format. So this we already shared, and I also share this after this training. So what happened? You can use these centralized information when you're dealing with because in VM and AKS is a different. If you have the same thing in cloud functions or app services, you have to use a different way to retrieve these informations. So first, let me just copy this URL. Here what you have to specify here is one you have to at the header is metadata true. This is the header is required when you're dealing with metadata endpoint. And here in the end you can see resource. So you have to specify the token that you are going to retrieve it, which resource you are going to retrieve it. Are you going to retrieve for Microsoft Graph? Are you going to retrieve for Azure Resource Manager? There are multiple things are there, different. So it's basically a scope, which scope you want to have an access token. So the management.azure.com is the endpoint, which is for Azure Resource Manager. Suppose if you want to do any actions on virtual machines, storage, and these kind of things, then you have to retrieve the token for this one. If you want to do any access on Azure AD or Intra ID, then you have to specify graph.microsoft.com. So let's hit enter, and you can see you'll get access token. Otherwise, you have to use, so here you can see if it's a VM or AKS, then you will get a token like this. If it's a functions or app service, then you have to use this command to get the access token. So based on where it's hosting it, you have to do some hit and trial to get the information, and then you can do it here. Okay, now we retrieve the access token. What we are going to do, what information this access token contain. I already told you GCP and Azure follow auth mechanism. So now what we are going to do it, let's copy access token decode. So JSON web token decode of a website, and let's copy this information from here, and then let's copy the entire things. Let's copy the access, sorry. Let's copy the access token from here. So you have to just check because so you will get access token. This is the client ID. Yeah, till here you'll get access token. Now let's decode this access token, and you'll get information. This is, you can see the audience, like the access token scope is belongs to management.azure.com. You will get a other tenant ID of the service principal where this service principal is hosted, which tenant this service principal is hosted there. So you will get a tenant ID and other information. Now, how you can use this access token, right? So in AWS, we use AWS CLI to configure it. GCP, we use GCP CLI. In Azure, we mostly use two different CLI. One is Easy PowerShell CLI or Microsoft Graph CLI. So if you want to do any action on ARM side, you use Easy PowerShell CLI. Or if you want to do any action on Azure AD, Intra AD side, then you can use PowerShell or Microsoft Graph, which is the latest CLI there. So these are the two CLI generally you require to do these operations. So the access token is belongs to management.azure.com, so I can use the CLI. So what we are going to do it here, let's use the PowerShell. Let's copy the token in one of the variable, and I can use the command called connect easy account, and then I have to specify the access token. Access token. This token is stored there in token file. Then I have to specify the account ID. Generally, in this case, you have to specify the subscription ID, but I specify the tenant ID that I retrieve it from here. This is the tenant ID, and then you hit enter. And you can see you are successfully able to log in here. And then you can do much more things based on what kind of access you have. You can do it there in ARM. Like you can create a VM, you can delete the VM, you can create a storage based on what sort of permissions you have. Then that you have to go into enumerate, in a second step. So once you get initial access, then you are going to enumerate it. Same thing. This is the action. Generally, Azure easy PowerShell CLI is mainly used for management.azure.com. That's in for ARM. Like if you want to do any action on Entra ID or Azure AD side, we suggest you to use the tool, the CLI, which is called Microsoft Graph CLI. So if you want to connect, it will be like Microsoft Graph. Then you have to specify the access token, which is there, and you can see it. And if you want to see, if it's, so you can get MG context. So you can see logged in as access token. So this is how you can configure your CLI, and later on you can do whatever actions that you want to perform based on the objective that you have. So this is the difference between these three cloud providers, different ways to get the these access token, and how you can configure it, and how you can use it. So this is the main objective behind this particular webinar, to familiar with, if you do any kind of even web application pen testing, and if they hosted on cloud, and if you identify the SSRF or RC, how you can retrieve those tokens, how you can use it, and how you can show the more impact to your client. Same thing, if you are doing a red team operation, this is the first phase to get the initial access. Then all the other steps that we discuss, you have to perform it here. Like all other, escalating your privilege, then perform privilege escalations, internal enumeration, lateral movement, data exfiltration, all these things you have to do it. So this is the main objective for this webinar, is to understand, get familiar with these cloud providers. If you want to do red team operation, how you can do it, and then later on is the stage you have to perform by your own. So when you're talking about, we design one course along with this scenario, where we'll give the idea about what is, different cloud providers, how they look like, how the, conceptual things behind these cloud providers are there. So like if you're not aware about role, service principle, service account, how it attach, what kind of services they attach. So we are starting from the initial phase to get you familiar with these kind of, these kind of familiar fundamentals there. Then we'll also discuss some of the red team operations, like how actually you'll perform those kind of operations there, to perform some sort of OSINT activities in the, cloud, in the public, public internet, and identify those information, how we can use those information to get access into the cloud. And then you have to perform multiple, enumeration techniques there. So there will be multiple challenges there. And we also get, you also get access of one of our Discord community, so where we are keep, updating our different things which is coming to cloud side. So this the course, multi-cloud red team analyst course, mainly focused on beginners audience. So if you are a beginner with a cloud side, and if you want to start your pen testing or red teaming journey, definitely this will help you to get idea about, different cloud providers, how they can configure, what kind of misconfiguration generally happen. So you can see the certification process that we have. So once you enroll this MCRT course, you will get access of PDF and videos material. So in the self-based, you can learn, all these different, fundamentals, different misconfigurations. Then you will also get access of our lab. We design a CTF kind of lab where you have to solve 30 different challenges there. So that challenges start from OSINT to, some enumeration or data exfiltrations. Once you've done these 30 challenge, you will get a certificate. So the target audience generally we are targeting for, like who are interested in cloud side, cloud pen testing, cloud security, cloud red teaming, or even if you are a part of blue teams, you can also get an idea about what kind of activities they are going to do, what kind of services is exposed to the public, and how you can, save for those services. So there is no such prerequisites there. So you just need to familiar with command line CLI. What we suggest, you download the Red Cloud OS operating system, and then you just need to configure your credential and start working without worrying about downloading multiple tools there. And no such cloud knowledge is required. We'll start from very beginners to intermediate level. So this course will start from beginners to intermediate level to give us the idea about this. We have giveaway or discount offer in this case as well. So we are going to release on 21st this one. So if you are interested, you will wait for 21st and then you can enroll it there. So yeah, that's all about this particular webinar. Generally, this motive of this webinar to get familiar with these cloud providers, different initial access ways, and then how you can configure with your CLI and what you can do it there. Now it comes to questions. Anybody have any questions here? You can directly ask here in our go-tos. Just a second, I'm just checking. Any questions anybody have? Just a second. Okay, so there are multiple questions I got. So I'll just start with some of the questions. Yeah, we will share this PPT and the recording of this PPT as well. So you can, go through it, and you can have any, if you have any doubt, any question, you can directly mail us, or you can join our Discord channel to get an idea about this one. Discord link we will share. So we will share via the mail. We will share the Discord link. We will share the PPT and videos recording to you, so you can go through it and you'll get the idea. Any other questions apart from any technical questions you have? You can feel free to ask here. I'm just going through the questions is asked here in Discord. Just a second. Okay, so one question is difference between red teaming and purple teaming organizations. So generally, red team is mainly focused to show them the impact. And when it comes to purple teaming, this will, so you will play, some kind of, war game exercise with your blue team members as well. So if you identify some kind of issue, if you do some kind of, suppose in our case, we exfiltrate the token from one of the VM. If your organizations they are using guard duty or any kind of security solution, they will detect it. But if they are not able to detect, you will discuss with your blue team member what kind of rule you implement. So suppose the rule, if your access token is using outside of Google Cloud or outside of any of the cloud provider, you will create a rule similar like that that will detect it. So there are multiple, if your red and blue team will play these kind of operations, then definitely it's a purple team. Will the token replay work if the victim has enabled conditional policy? Just a second, I'm not able to get. Okay, conditional policy on their tenant. So sometime what happened, there are some scenarios, if conditional policies applied, generally these conditional policies applied on service principal side or conditional policy applied on user side. Generally, they forget to apply the. So in our case, suppose in Azure, if they applied a conditional policy, but the token that we retrieved from the managed identity that is attached to a VM. So in that case, these condition policies won't be worked there in this case. So basically, they depend upon where they applied. If they applied on service principle, or if they applied on even managed identity, there are system assigned managed identity and user assigned managed identity. So some of the scenario they will work, some of the scenario won't work. They will also allow, like, yeah, sometimes access token will allow you to bypass those condition policies because they already have the what we can say, they already have I forget the terms. So they definitely the claims. Yeah, they already have a claims to that particular things. So that means there won't be any conditional policy applied from that case. So this is how you can bypass in scenario. Okay, one question would you be the kill chain again the methodology. Cyber kill chain. Any other questions if I'm going to cyber kill chain? So if you are going here, if you can see here, cyber kill chain is basically what process a red teamer or pen tester follow to achieve their operations. So there are two kind of things. One is called assume breach scenario, where your client will share some sort of credentials with you. So you no need to get the no need to do OSINT or some kind of activity. You directly have access on those particular cloud environment. In some cases, they ask you to perform the pen testing or red teaming as a external. So you have to do recon activities to identify, publicly available, credentials, publicly available IP address. Just like these IP address, they will share with us. Maybe you will get these IP address from Shodan or any kind of search engine there. Then you use those things to get the initial access. then perform the backdooring or persistence techniques, then escalate your privilege. You definitely, so once you have a backdoor in that particular cloud providers, you have to escalate your privilege, and then you can do these actions internally, like enumerate internally, identify some other credentials, then use those credentials to literally move. So this entire circle will work until you want to achieve your goal. And then you can exfilter the data like PI information, credit card information, source code of the applications based on what objective you have. You can create the impact. Like impact basically, like you can perform the ransomware, you can perform the any other activities like crypto mining, and then all these things you'll have it in a report and share with your higher management to complete these operations. This basically depend upon what kind of objective you have. Okay. Any other questions? Discord we will share. Discord link, this study material and videos we will share over the mail. So don't worry about this one. So one question is, did you use any add-on plugin and API library for session demonstration? So we use three different CLIs. So what we suggest, no need to worry about these things. So we created a one tool called Red Cloud OS. You can just search on Google, which is there in GitHub. You can download that VM, and no need to install, no need to worry about any other libraries or any other things. You just need to download that VM. Automatically, there are hundreds of tools installed there, and you can use it. So one more questions. As a external pen tester, is there any difference? So basically, when you do internal, generally we follow assume breach scenarios. They will share some sort of credentials and some sort of access to their of one of the cloud providers or cloud environment. But when it comes to external, if they won't share any kind of credentials, you have to identify multiple ways to get access to their internal network. Internal network means cloud providers. So then you have to identify the leaked credentials. You have to identify uh, any sort of IP address which is application running there, and there are much more things there. Maybe you would need to perform some sort of phishing or these kind of activities there. So based on your objective, yeah, you have to make a plan as an external pen tester to get the inside of this network or this cloud providers. Okay, we will share the other details via mail. So if you have any queries, any technical questions, if you have, feel free to ask. Other details we will share via the mail. Okay, I think no more questions. So yeah, thank you so much for joining this session. I hope you learn some new things. And yeah, if you have any query, any questions, definitely feel free to ask. Uh, okay, thank you. Yeah, bye bye.